husband of 50 years, Gordon Rogers. And I was Glenn's sister. One thought that I had thinking about today was that longer than anyone in this, I've known Glenn longer than anybody in the room. Because I was his, just older sister, 16 months older, and we grew up together. My brother Jim is here. Where's Jim? Jim's back there, but he was mean enough to say I had to do the talking and not him. So and he was the younger brother. So we had one older brother, 5 years older than I, and then the three of us grew up very close and grew up together. And we're very close. I don't know what to say. There are so many things when I think about Glenn. Glenn was Glenn is, he isn't or was, he is. He is alive today, and he is one of the sweetest, dearest men of my lifetime. He was a good friend, a good buddy in this life, and he was much an introvert. We knew him as a very quiet, shy young man. And there's a picture over here someplace of Jim and Glenn when they were little guys, and you can just see it in that picture. I've had that picture, seen that picture off and on all of our lives, and thought, that's the way I think of Glenn. Still, is this little boy, little red-headed boy, and just very quiet and shy. But we took care of each other a lot, and I was asking my daughters, what should I say? I don't want to say too much. I'm not a good speaker, and they said, Mom, people love to hear stories, and so in talking to my brother Jim a little while ago, Jim told me one of the memories he has of Glenn, and I thought that is a good story to share because it brings a little levity to the whole thing. Jim, do you want to tell that story? You may.
No, you're doing just fine.
Yeah. We were talking about how quiet and sweet and gentle Glenn was. He was very kind. He's all of our lives on the planet together. He has been just so kind to us. Always a gift giver for, because we didn't see each other that often. When we did, he would, give us a gift of take us out to dinner. He'd send us a card with something in it, and for a guy, that's pretty cool. Men don't always remember those kinds of things. And he would send Gordon notes, and he and Gordon were good buddies, and I think Gordon might share a story too. But still, I said to Jim, I still remember him as kind of rough sometimes. But that's just kind of in the back of my mind. Why do I think of him as, that way? And he said, well, he broke my arm twice. And twice. I don't know what the first time was, but the one time I did remember with Jim, they were playing football in the backyard in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Fort Knox, Kentucky. And they were playing out with a bunch of kids, and Jim came in crying because his arm had gotten broken, and it was broken in two places, and it just literally sagged like that. It was awful. So we had Glenn tackled him, so he broke his arm. And but one of the sweet things that Jim said, we both agreed on our memories of Glenn and his personality and his just tenderness and quietness around us, even though we loved each other very much, and so I'm very much a Christ follower, and I was reading a book, and I really felt like something popped out where the Lord said to me, "This is what your brother was like." I also just have to remember one funny story about Glenn and Jim both. It just came to my mind. See, this is why I'm not a speaker, because my brain is like scrambled eggs. But when I was in high school, one of the things they used to do is if we were at the dinner table and they were getting ready to tell a joke, they felt it really important to raise their hands and say, "Now, Sherrie, this is going to be a joke. Now, don't take it too seriously. This is a joke." And then they would and I remember, I wouldn't be surprised to hear Jim say something like that anytime, but Glenn was in on that too, and they made fun of me all the time, but it was all fun. I was reading this, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read just a little bit of it, and not very long, but and then I'll tell you why I came, what made me think of Glenn. When Jesus calls a man, he bids him to come and die, said Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Die to self-interest and self-promotion, and place our life wholly in the trusting hands of Christ. It makes no sense intellectually, and it's a precarious and vulnerable posture, but I know it's the right thing to do. And then another part of this book goes on to say, to quote Luke 2:10, that says, where Jesus said, I bring you good news of great, or this was before Jesus was born, but it says, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. It was promised an angel regarding the birth of Jesus. Interestingly, the message was given to people working one of the worst jobs of the day, shepherding. And this man that writes the book suggests that if he were to put up a help wanted sign for a shepherd, it might sound like this: shepherds to care for dumb, smelly sheep, long hours, low pay, late nights, regular threats from wolves and robbers, travel a must, housing provided, any spot on the ground you can find, health benefits included, the fresh air will do you good. And what the Lord reminded me of was that was Jesus is called the Good Shepherd, and he's the Good Shepherd. And Glenn was a shepherd. He was not a long talker, great talker, unless you could just catch him in a rare moment. He didn't boast about himself or the things he did. And even in all the years that we knew him, he didn't talk a lot about Vietnam with us. I mean, there were too many hard memories, but he did talk about it. And one man you'll meet in a minute, he talked about this gentleman a lot because they served together in Vietnam. And I'm not sure Tracy would have to tell me more of the story, but he won medals for his time in Vietnam, but I never heard of those medals. He didn't tell us about those medals. And one thing about being in the military, my husband's retired from the military, my dad was, the military could teach the church a lot about community because we took care of each other. And the men take care of each other, the families take care of each other. And I thought in the situations that Glenn was put in, he was a shepherd in a lot of ways, and maybe Morales or Roosevelt will tell us about that. But he was quiet, humble, thoughtful, and kind, and he was a giver. He also was very careful with his money. But when his heart told him to give, he would do that, and without second thought. And so, okay, I did it. I've done it. I could tell a lot of stories, I'm sure, if I weren't so nervous. But I did want Gordon to have a chance to say something about Glenn because he's, I'll just introduce by saying that Glenn didn't have, Gordon didn't have brothers. And so my three brothers became his brothers in our marriage. And he and Glenn shared some. Gordon is not an introvert, though. but there were things that they shared and loved to do together, and so.
Excuse me. I met Glenn when I came home to court Sherrie. Came to Catlin for the first time, and when I pulled up in front of the house, I was trying to remember, was Sherrie with me, or was I visiting and she had already gone home, and I can't remember. But I remember that I was wondering if this is the right town, is this the right house, you know, and we didn't have GPSs in those days. So I was like, oh, I think this looks about right, and I pulled up and I remember this guy came out. I think Sherrie came running out first. And then I think Glenn came running out right after him, and I don't know if Jim was even there because he was doing this music stuff someplace, playing guitars and so forth. But he came out, and I had been told that we looked somewhat alike in those pictures. You might be able to see that even now. But immediately we connected. We thought in similar fashion. I don't know, we have the same worldview. It'd be a more adult thing than I was at that point, for sure. I was 19, I think he was 18 or 17. He was 16 months, different. So, but we just connected, and we connected. It was just fun. So when I came to their house, I met these strange people. They were strange to me, And I was trying to win over the dad so he would, support, our engagement and so forth. And what I did with Glenn is immediately. We talked basketball, we talked baseball, we talked various things like that, and then he would generally find a place we could go play. And it would just be a one-on-one, or it'd be with a small group of people he knew, but he always, and it went on for years. Every time we came home from the Army something, if he was home, he'd find a court for us to play, and Illinois State was big, and Doug Collins was big in those days. He would tell me the stories about he and Doug, playing for I think Chestnut. He represented Chestnut. But what I remember about that first meeting was that the home was almost like a beehive. You'd go in, and there were people coming and going all the time. All the neighbor kids, and I think Luann might remember this as well, because Sherrie's friends or Jim's friends or Glenn's friends were coming and going, and I was trying to keep track of who are these people coming and going, because I haven't tried to build a family, and these people are kind of like family, because they're just, in the groove. And but we kind of started out that way and developed a close relationship. But then we went back to college, and we got married in our senior year. And somehow Glenn then enlisted, and I think the gentleman who enlisted with him, I forgot your name. No,
Paul Thomas.
Paul. They went in at the same time, and they went in just a few months before I did. I got drafted the day I graduated from college, but they preceded me into the military, I think, by a few months. And so I didn't see Glenn until I guess he went to Vietnam, came back from Vietnam, and in some respects we were the same guys, but there was something different about Glenn. And
But you made up for it by running.
Yeah. We, at some point along there, we stopped playing basketball so much and started running. And running, is, most of you know, is more of an introverted kind of an activity. You don't run as a group. You run by yourself on the hills of Illinois, or not hills. And what I came to believe was that because he had changed his life goals, really. The Vietnam experience and other similar things, he had decided he's just the helping professions, counseling and coaching and relating to people through music videos. I mean, when you plot the dots on the activities, you see there was a very clear change of direction, and it was substantial. It was in every area of his life to invest in other people, and maybe the coaching kind of an idea, then in serving others. When we would come, so one of the thoughts I had was that, particularly after seeing this Vietnam special on PBS the last couple months, that he was taking on the burdens of a lot of people in his job every day, talking, counseling, people who had addictions of various sorts and other, issues that needed help with. He poured himself into those people, and then his need for running was even greater, because the way we runners get balanced in our life is go off and just, clear out everything that's been put in your head that day or that week, and get some fresh air, some fresh thoughts, and you kind of get recentered on who you are, and then you go back the next day or the next week, and you can contribute again and be a part of a team, and a loving, caring team. As I saw Glenn in those last several years after Vietnam, he just immersed himself more and more in that area, in that direction of his life. And it was less about him, as Sherrie's quotes indicated, it was less about him and more about how do I pour myself into the lives of others and help them through difficult situations. And so I would say Glenn was a role model for all of us. And in many cases, he didn't know he was a mentor, but he was. His behavior spoke volumes. And I think it was a life well lived. We just think that we were so far away. We always lived in different states, and we lived in different countries in some cases, and we didn't see him for extended periods of time. And now looking back on it, we're thinking, couldn't we have found a way? Was there a chance that we could have gone here instead of there, or whatever? And you can't, run your life in hindsight. You just got to move forward. But he blessed a lot of people in just so many ways. Those are my thoughts. I know that the thoughts, as we continue this afternoon, it's like a patchwork of different pieces that all of us have been missing. I don't know anything about his experience in Vietnam, but Roosevelt's going to share some of his thoughts with us of what really happened, up close and personal with Vietnam. As we looked at these various tables, it's like, oh my gosh, I was a part of 3 of the 4 tables. I know nothing about one of these tables, and I'm interested in filling in the gaps as we continue sharing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.